My name is Caridad Nussa. I'm originally from Cuba. I was born and raised in Havana. And when I finished my 12th grade, I decided to go to college. And I went to my major was in English. So I started the foreign languages department. So when I graduated in 1983, I started working with foreigners. And among the foreigners I started working with, I came across with a group of women from the United States. So that's the way that I met some of the women that they are members of the U.S.-Cuban Women Collaboration. I met Cindy Domingo, Jan Strout, and many other women from this organization in Cuba. I was their interpreter for many years. And after that, in the 2001, I was invited to come to the United States in a professional exchange for 6 months. I came here to West Virginia University. After that, I went back home, and they invited me again to come back to the United States for master's degrees, and I thought that that was a good opportunity professionally. So I came back to Morgantown in West Virginia, and I had my 2 masters, one in education and the other one in foreign languages. Plus, I had a certification in women's studies. So that's the way that I started in getting more into women's issues. I decided to stay in the United States for economic reasons. So I have been living here in the States in the last 10 years. And ever since, Cindy, Jan, and many other friends have asked me to join them in their events talking about Cuba, because Cuba is my country of birth, and it's an issue that I always developed in my classes, with my friends, my peers, with everybody. So Cuba is always in my heart, and for me it was easy just to jump and be part of their presentations in different events. Now I am a member of the advisory board, and also I am in the different committees that they have, and I have collaborated in bringing academic people from Cuba here, like Dr. Norma Vasallo, who is the president of the Cuban Women's Studies in Havana University. I have also worked in bringing artists to tour here in the United States, and being in people-to-people contact, and for all those people who are interested in Cuban issues, so they can ask Cuban nationals about that. And also I have been part of American delegations going back to Cuba and presenting their perspective of U.S. women here in the United States. So that's the way that I have been connected to my friends, my colleagues, and to this women organization. Any other question?
Hi, I'm Jan Strout. I'm involved with the U.S. Women in Cuba collaboration, and I'm really glad to talk a little bit about how I got involved with Cuba, what kinds of activities we're working on with the collaboration, and some thoughts about how women in the world and global feminisms are the answers to what is facing us today and in the future. But just a little bit about my own history. I had a chance to get involved with a Central America peace movement back in the 80s during a very horrific U.S. foreign policy period under President Reagan. And at that point, I discovered what was going on to Nicaragua and their Sandinista revolution. I had a chance to get involved with the Sister City Project, as well as some organizing in Montana. And in going to Nicaragua and getting to meet the women involved in their revolution, they had told me if I was impressed with the way in which they were addressing the kinds of fundamental human rights issues that they were facing, particularly in areas of violence and poverty, that I needed to go to Cuba and see the model of the women's movement there. Well, I'd grown up in a pretty conservative family, had never considered going to Cuba because, of course, it was a country that had a very different political, social, and economic system that I'd been grown up with and had been, frankly, taught to fear. But at the same time, I was also born a feminist, I am sure, and was very, very concerned about how in the United States the women's movement was working very, very hard, and I was a part of that, to offer and struggle for our rights, but didn't necessarily incorporate the resources necessary for us to exercise our rights and to make sure that the women's movement could include all women. So off we go after having a chance to organize a couple of women's delegations to Nicaragua in the late 80s, meeting with a diverse group of women and men who were fighting for their dignity and fighting for their humanity. And at that point, we said, well, we better go on to Cuba and have a chance to find out what they are doing and how they are influencing not only the transformation of their own country, but also the transformation of women of the world. Out of all of this grew a couple of different projects, but in 1999, Cuba first for me was in 1990. 20 years later, about 18 trips to Cuba later, it's become my place of passion, my place of nourishment, and of inspiration to do the work I do for feminism, for social justice, and for peace building in this country. Very interestingly enough, just before 9/11 in 2001, Cindy Domingo, myself, several other women felt that we needed an independent organization apart from the different groups that we worked with. We worked with a variety of feminist, peace, and social justice organizations, but Cuba and building women's leadership was really what brought us together to create the collaboration. And out of all of our campaigns, many of which you've heard about already on YouTube, we truly wanted to be able to focus on why women, why Cuba? What is it about the women's movement in Cuba within a revolutionary process was able to achieve so much, to be the first government to ratify CEDAW, the Women's Treaty, to have the most progressive reproductive rights and justice movement, to be able to bring together race, class, politics of sexuality, and international sisterhood and solidarity to the world as a part of their own project. So for me, why women, why Cuba was the answer to that question that I had growing up, coming to my own development as a feminist. If we're fighting for rights, we must have resources as well to make this truly a movement for all. Ultimately, the collaboration has been sponsoring delegations. We have campaigns that talk about the reality of Cuban women's lives. We fight for everyone's right to travel and not have Cuba be the only country in the entire U.S. government that has severe restrictions. But most importantly, for all of this, we work with our sisters in Cuba to learn about how to help transform the U.S. women's movement so that it too can become a series of recourses with rights that can help empower and embody all women and the men who love us in this country. So I think for me right now, having had the great pleasure and honor of working with the U.S. Women and Cuba collaboration, I think it's our work in looking at global feminisms and how women in the world have both so much to teach us, for us to be able to share and truly collaborate as our name states, and how truly the need for women to cross borders, the borders of our personal lives, the borders of our politics, the borders of our bodies, and ultimately the borders that are going to be transformed to create an alternative kind of vision for humanity is where it's at. So we invite you to come and check us out on our website, www.womenandcuba.org, and please join us. Thanks so much.